We're there. Some familiar faces in the audience, some people that I don't know, troublemakers at the back. For those of you who don't know who I am Bea, and my business is Petite Properties. We specialise in smaller scale miniatures, so 21 to 24th and anything below that. It is a husband and wife duo, and also we have our youngest daughter Mo, who also helps us too. It's been going, the business, 23 years. Like I said, it's all smaller scale. I did at one time, way back in the midst of time, do 12 scales a little bit. But what I'm going to talk about today is irrelevant of scale. It's basically me being really cheap with things and how you can save money with your miniatures hobby. So we're going to go into that in a bit of detail later. Do not be put off that I have notes. I have been made to have these because, and I'll quote, apparently, Mum, you do waffle. So this is to keep me on task and focus so I don't go off on a tangent, and we'll be here all afternoon. And I know Jane wants to come and give you a lovely talk too. So for those of you who, actually I want to ask first, who has done smaller scale miniatures here? Who is staunch 12th scale? Oh, no staunch 12th scale. Oh, yeah. Basically, we are all miniaturists. So some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about is very, very obvious. And I am not reinventing the wheel with my top tips and advice. I'm just kind of underlining it and highlighting it for you. Now, looking around, apart from a few exceptions, I can see that a lot of you are my generation. There's a few of you that look slightly older and a few of you that look slightly younger. But for myself and for any older people here today, I think that we're incredibly lucky because we grew up probably the last generations before technology has taken over. I don't know if any of you have got grandchildren. I certainly have 4 adorable grandchildren, and they all love their screens. I am very, very happy that I grew up and had a childhood where I didn't have a screen. We only had 4 channels. Well, 4 came in, 3 to start with. I remember the 4th arriving. And what this means is that I spent a lot of my time as a child bored. And what does boredom do? Boredom makes you creative, either naughty or creative. Luckily, I was creative. But I think that the generations now don't sit down and make as much as we do. Now, how many of you made miniatures when you were children, when you were younger? It was quite a few. Now, when I was little, and this is not a sob story, I didn't have lots of toys. I had a few key toys, but I did have a mum who thought that I should make my own entertainment, make my own toys. And she was quite old-fashioned in that way that she liked to see me being creative. At the time, I thought it was quite harsh. I could have done with a few more Barbies. But she thought that I should get creative and spend time doing rather than having the latest Barbie house. So I spent a lot of my childhood making things with boxes. And I think that that was actually quite an apprenticeship to what I do now. Cardboard featured throughout all my childhood, and it still features in my professional life too. I think that miniaturists, by their very nature, we are obviously creative people. Now, when I first came into the hobby, which was way back in the midst of time in 2003, I came in professionally and the business was founded. I think that the landscape was very different to what it is today. Obviously, 1/12 scale predominated. The smaller scales were not really evident. 24th scale was just starting to break through. But also, one of the things I've noticed most about the hobby is that it started really with collecting. And over the time that I've been in the industry, there has been a marked progression towards DIY. Now, I don't know if you will agree with that. The collecting is still there and it's still an important side of the hobby. But I do feel that the customers that we talk to are more creating their own miniatures. They want to build their own things. Now, obviously, with technology moving forward, it has allowed laser cutters, 3D printers. There's been lots of development within the industry, as so to speak, which has then meant that the production of kits becomes a more viable option. You know, we have laser cutters, we produce kits, and you guys enjoy them and build them. However, I think that as miniaturists, we are all inherently, going back to my childhood, wombles. Now, hands up who remembers wombles? Yes. Wonderful creatures. Now, at the moment it's trendy to reuse, repurpose, recycle. Well, I'm sorry, the wombles were doing that through the 70s. They got the march on that. And I think that miniaturists, by our very nature, that's what we do too. Hands up, who has looked at an object and thought, now that looks like a kitchen sink. Exactly. Now, the thing about making miniatures is I know that we are about to have a budget, and without getting party political, because we don't do that in this world, but people's hobby budgets have been reduced and reduced, and I feel you have to kind of justify, I know I do, spending money on perceived luxuries. So for now, to focus on miniatures that are cost effective and friendly to the old purse is quite an important thing. I know that as a company, our price point is very important because we want people to be able to come buy our kits, enjoy them, and feel like they've got value for money. But I think as customers, you're quite a tough crowd because you have that creative spark in you. Now, I think with the making miniatures cost effective and making miniatures affordable, you already have all the answers because you're all wombles. You're all doing it anyway. You're looking at things, you're thinking, well, that looks like a kitchen sink. That looks like some corrugated iron. That you're very good at that to start with. And it's just keeping that momentum going that helps us all justify what we do spend on our wonderful hobby. Now, I think that where we shop is something that is important. I am not against it, but I personally am not very much a fan of places like Hobbycraft. I think if you are on a budget with your hobby, this is potentially not the cheapest place to source your materials. I watched a program recently that was about cooking, so nothing to do with miniatures, but it was Jamie Oliver. Love him or hate him, he's very popular. And he was talking about his concept of cooking on a budget and creating meals on a budget. But what he expressly said was important was the use of a pantry. And what his concept with the pantry is that you have all your stock of your spices and your equipment and your stock cubes and your bits and your bobs and your seasoning. You have all those in your pantry. So you get your basic ingredients and then you make them into something wonderful by using your pantry staples. And I think you can really apply that to making miniatures. If you have basic free, we're going to talk about different materials in a bit, but if you have free materials or very cheap materials and you have a supplier of the right tools and the right little connective materials and techniques, you can make something very basic, something very wonderful, but not much money has been spent. Going back to the budget as well, one of the things that I wanted to touch on, and I know it is relevant to the talk, I told you I'd go on a tangent, is the thing that COVID taught us, and I've said this repeatedly since COVID, COVID happened and the world stopped. And what we all realized at the same time was the people that navigated through COVID positively were the ones, like you guys, who had hobbies. People that had interest, doesn't have to be miniatures, people that painted, model railways, they baked, they sketched, it didn't matter. Being creative is incredibly important to mental health. So at the moment, we have an imminent budget on the way that I think is going to be quite tough on a lot of pockets. But what I want, obviously my business is miniatures, but what I don't want people to think is, well, now I'm going to have to not spend anything on my hobbies. The thing is, it's our hobbies that give us that passion. It's our hobbies that give us positive mental health. So if we can find ways to make our hobbies more affordable, it's a win-win situation. Now, as miniaturists, as I said, you're wombles. You literally are doing it already. You are creating something from nothing. So of all the hobbies to have in the world, what a great hobby we have, because we're out the blocks already with this keep it affordable. Something else I wanted to touch on was a friend of mine called Phil Parker. He's a model railway professional and he writes for BRM magazine. Very knowledgeable man. And we had a very interesting conversation about crafting hours. Now, obviously, I produce kits and lots of other people produce kits, and their kits are a great starting point, a building block. Start with a kit, it gives you the fundamental structure, say for a doll's house, and then you can add inexpensive materials to it. But what Phil identified was the importance of crafting hours. So if you're buying a kit for, say, £20, how many hours is it going to take you to complete that kit? How many hours is it going to take you of work, of landscaping, of finishing? And when you actually look at it like that, our hobby becomes quite value for money. Kits aren't, very rarely do people put a kit together all in one day and it's done. I mean, there are some people among you, I'm sure, here that do, but I know I don't. So you've got to look at, when we look at our budgets for miniatures, also appreciate the crafting hours and the enjoyment that you're going to get out of it in the end. Now, does anybody here scratch build? No. Oh, one tentative little hand, sort of almost. Scratch build basically means building from scratch. So you do, yeah. Now, when we're looking at materials for scratch building, we are going full Blue Peter, yeah. And the great thing is about scratch building, what sort of thing do you scratch build, my love? Whatever. That's a very good way of putting it. If you're looking at building houses, scratch build, I know I've said this before in a talk, I love to use foam core board, which, And now foam core board, for those who don't know what it is, it's like a plastic foam and it's sandwiched between two cardboard layers. You can buy it in places like Hobbycraft in different size sheets, but it's incredibly expensive. If you go to your local supermarket, do ask permission of somebody that works there. You know the boards that hang up that say, oh, we've got this sale or that special offer in the supermarket that hang from the ceiling. Most of those are actually made from foam core board. So if you are polite and ask, they normally all end up in the skip at the end of the promotion. And if you ask permission, you can go and help yourself. And it gives you a great supply of a construction material that is incredibly strong, yet you can cut it with a craft knife. So scratch building, for those that are brave enough to do it, there's a myriad different materials out there. Of course, the great thing about scratch building is, if you're brave enough to go for it, it's free, mainly, almost, or minimal. And if it goes wrong, it really doesn't matter. Because you haven't bought an expensive kit or an expensive item, it doesn't matter if it goes wrong. Throw it away, start again, yeah? just going to check that I'm not going off topic. I'm all right. Right. So, for example, we looked at foam core board, which moves me to my favourite all-time modelling material ever, which is cardboard. When I die, I'm actually going in a cardboard coffin just to make the point that cardboard is all you need. Cardboard is obviously free. It's all around us. The things that can't be made in cardboard, sometimes I think that's not actually worth making. If you can't make it from cardboard, why make it? We obviously live surrounded by a plethora of different types of cardboard. Hands up who has, I'm going to call it a miniaturist stash of supplies and materials. Yeah, there's a lot of, oh yeah, yeah. Now, and there's a lot of hands up. You didn't know there's going to be this much action in this. It's like aerobics. Hands up, I feel like Jane Fonda. Just don't look like her. So cardboard is like a staple of a stash. And obviously, I am not going to teach Granny to suck eggs. You all know that cardboard comes in all different varieties, thicknesses, etc., etc. And a good miniaturist will have a ready supply. Obviously, different types of cardboard lend themselves to creating different types of things. But if you don't collect cardboard, I strongly suggest you start. Okay. The only thing I would add is that if you do get the creative bug and you think, oh, I'm going to make X with cardboard or Y, apparently it is good manners to at least wait for the Weetabix box to be empty before you cut the side off. Who knew? I found out the hard way. So what we all need to be doing as miniaturists is getting an interesting supply of cardboard. So when you're out, obviously like places like Starbucks, when you get your nice little coffee, the corrugated coffee holders, it's all things like that. Like I said, we're all wombles. You're probably doing this already, so I'm not redesigning the wheel. These are tried and tested things. But the one thing that I think miniaturists don't do, and which I was guilty of, for many, many years, I think it was about 15 years, I had a collective stash. And then we moved, Petite Properties moved. So I had to obviously move with it, which meant I had to tidy up, which meant I had to sort out, which was fine. But what I did discover was so much that I didn't know I had. So much cool stuff that I didn't know I had. I was like, I'm a bit distracted. I need to stay on task. We're moving. And there's me like, oh, look at this. I could do this. So the one thing I would say is we all have stashes of materials, like construction materials or paints or whatever. But the thing I would advise, and you can go home and do this, is actually look at what is in your stash. Now, I'm no Zen bunny. I work in utter chaos. So I am preaching what I don't 100% do. But go home and actually go through your stash and organise it. You know, organise your cardboard, organise those little funny things that you're not quite sure what you're going to need them for, but you are going to need them. But know what's in it, and then you know what you've got so that you know what you can use. So actually collate, if you're collecting cardboard of different thicknesses and all of this, be aware of what you've got. You know, trim it down. I don't know, these storage boxes, storage and creating Zen workspaces is all very now my place. Mine's chaos. But actually know what you've got. Be a bit of a librarian, sort it out, order it. You can also see, well, I haven't got any of that, or I have got some of this. The other thing I wanted to say is my family call me a package predator, okay? Which means that we are coming up to Christmas, the most wonderful time of the year. And on Christmas morning, when I'm with my family and my grandchildren, sometimes I do get a little bit distracted that I'm not looking at what they're opening. So that box. You keeping that? And sometimes the grandchildren just bring me bits of packaging. It's like, this is for you, Nana. Which is lovely. But obviously we're coming up to Christmas. When you can argue about you shouldn't really do it, but things are so overpackaged at Christmas. So do be incredibly vigilant. Your stash can have an amazing injection of wonderfulness. You're looking for things like interesting textured cardboard, which makes brilliant roof tiles. Obviously, the thicker the card, the thicker the roof tile. So this will slide up to use easily in 12 scale or right down into 144. Just depends on the thickness of what you've got. But if you get any of those, the really cheap and nasty Christmas cards, that you put on the mantelpiece and then they curl up a little bit because they're so thin. Don't throw them. Love the person that sent them to you, because they're such a lovely thin card. They make really beautiful, thin, precise slates for roof tiles for 1 to 48. So thank the person that's given you the cheap card. They've done you a turn. And also anything that has glazing on it. So like an acetate, if you've got a box with an acetate window on it, get that acetate out. And again, get yourself a little folder or file, all your acetate, all your different thicknesses of acetate can go in there. Acetate can obviously be used for glazing. I make fake water features with using acetate as a flat surface for the water. There's lots of different uses that you can do for acetate. So that, keeping your eye out for that. You're keeping your eye out for any strange little bendy bits or plastic, you know what I mean? The little, I don't know about you, but we've got my youngest grandson's 4, so he's full in the swing of like Fisher Price, and everything's like you're twisting it like for days. You're trying to get into these toys, but all those little twisty bits and all the little intricate bits, keep them all. Keep them all. Enjoy your family opening the presents, of course, because that is the spirit of Christmas. But be vigilant, be a packaging predator, and by the time you finish Christmas morning, you just have this little pile. I have a dustbin bag one side of me, and then Nana's bag the other side, and I put it in. But I do have to say that Tony's a little bit of, he's one of those neat freaks. So he's the person running around with the black bin bag. You know, yeah, have you got one of those? You're trying to enjoy the moment with the wrapping paper. He's like, bin bag. Anyway, now we've done Weetabix, we've done pantry. Blue Peter. Hands up who loved Blue Peter. Yeah, I did. Do you know what? I never got a Blue Peter badge. Did you? Oh, devastated. I always wanted a Blue Peter badge. I never got one. Disappointment of my life. But again, that embrace, that whole sticky back plastic, yogurt pots, and that kind of thing. When I was little, going back to the 70s, my mum had quite a robust cardboard box that she kept under the stairs. I wasn't Harry Potter, by the way. She just kept the box. I didn't live under the stairs. And in it, she would put anything that, like, you know, tea bag box, yogurt pots, plastic trays, anything like that. And then I would create wonderful things with it. I never did wonderful tidying up. That was a little bit of an issue. Wonderfully creative, not so good with the tidying. But by using all these different things in different purposing them differently and use them in different ways, nothing is different. I'm just probably a bit better at it now than I was when I was little. But the same with you guys. Keep yourself a box, chuck all your boxes in, and reuse as much as you can, because you're saving money. You can go and buy sheets of card, you can go and buy foam board, you can go and buy all these things from Hobbycraft. Not, as I said earlier, not my personal favourite. I think it's very expensive. However, hands up if you have somewhere like the Range. I do love the Range. I saw something on social media and it said, I'm going shopping at the Range, and they said, what are you looking for? And it was, I don't know, the Range will tell me when I get there. And I was like, yes, absolutely. But the Range has a great section of basic crafting materials. They do lovely little pots of acrylic paint. Has anybody got those? I've got literally every colour that they've got. And when you do a compare and contrast, Hobbycraft is like £3.75 for the little bottles, whereas the range you're looking at £1.25 for this. It's not the same brand, but it's the same paint. It's an acrylic paint, which is great to have because you can paint it on anything. So when you're shopping, just be aware. Go places like the range, B&M, and also the Works. Who likes the Works? Do like the Works. Go to the children's section as well. Now, this brings me, I haven't got many props today, but everybody thinks that when I make miniatures that maybe there's a little bit more like precision and gentle considered dabbing and painting. No. I just use, and this is why we sell them, you don't have to buy them from us, other brands are available. Just simple children's brushes. Every single brush here is a brush I use on a daily basis if I'm building. And every single brush here is aimed at children. Okay, so you do not need to buy expensive brushes or anything like that. This one particularly, and I know I've talked about this in workshops, looks like the most hideous brush in the world. This is Mo's favourite paintbrush, and for good reason. It's a nylon brush, which again, people aren't necessarily fond of. It's incredibly cheap as chips, but when you're painting with it, it doesn't leave brush marks. It has such a soft, you can blend it, and it just, when you're working in smaller scales, that's particularly helpful because otherwise the brush marks look like a giant brush has been in and painted. So it doesn't have to be expensive materials, which leads me to the elephant in the room, which is Temu. Now, some say Temu, some say Temu. Oh no, see, now. But this is a topic that divides the room. There are some people that will shop on Temu, which for those of you, does anyone not know what Temu is? You all know what Temu is. Okay. It's obviously an online Chinese, Asian Amazon. And it's very, very popular for very low price products. Now, of course, they're very low price, and some people feel that the quality is maybe not as what they would expect, but the price is very low. Now, I'm ignoring all the other stuff that they do, although just as a sidebar, if you do go on Temu, be careful, because I started scrolling looking for, say, a paintbrush. I didn't, but paintbrush. I ended up looking at mittens for dogs. Now, I don't have a dog, but I'd picked out the mittens that I would buy if I had a dog. So it's a bit like going down a rabbit hole. You could be there, you can lose hours, literally days of your life on that site. However, if you don't mind shopping on it, and I appreciate it's not for everybody, they do sell incredibly cheap brushes and the basic equipment that you can use for making miniatures. And this goes back to what we were talking about, the pantry. It's about having just a set of simple tools and then getting your simple materials and combining the two. And what that means is you've not had a big outlay in the first place. The brushes and things that I've bought specialized brushes from Temu. They actually do what they said on the tin and a fraction of the cost. So there are bargains to be had. There was something that I thought I wanted to buy that was totally amazing. It was to do with cooking. I tried to cook, I'm not very good. And I wanted to buy it, and I couldn't get it in time because Temu have quite long delivery times. And I couldn't get it in time from Temu. So I thought, I'll buy it from Amazon. And I ordered it was a repeat order of something that I've ordered before. But this time I ordered it from Amazon. The exact same product came in the same packaging with the same stickers on it. It just came via Amazon, and I paid twice the price for it via Amazon. So there are bargains online. We're now in an online world. Shopping isn't just what we've got in our high street, the Works, the range. Do maximise, if you're happy to do so, using online shopping to save money. You know, at the end of the day, our pockets are finite. Ooh, lights. Our pockets are finite, and the more you can make with your money, the happier we're all going to be. Make your money go a little bit further. Now, aside from the range and the works, are there any other shops? I wanted also to ask you guys, like they're the main ones that I will go and pick up bits and bobs. Is there anywhere that anyone else can recommend here? Oh, okay. Yeah. You can. You could. Ah, right. We have a picture framers near us, yeah, and they either sell packs of, they used to sell packs of, or you could go through their skip. They were very lovely. They were picture framers, so they did the mount card templates, and they didn't always use the bit that they cut out the middle. So yeah, absolutely. So, is there any other tips? Because I don't want it just to be me. Anybody else? Home bargains. Now, I do love Home Bargains. I do love Home Bargains. And I tell you what I did pick up from Home Bargains. They did, and they do also sell it in the range. It's like heady days. I don't know if you've seen on our stand, there's a few houses that have a fluted ridge tile to them. On the top, the apex, it has like a fluted fancy ridge tile. That was created simply by using, you get packs of children's scissors that have like a couple of the, and I bought a pack, I want to say it was 5 scissors. It was either from the range or from Home Bargains, and there was probably 1 or 2 that I wouldn't use, and I passed them on to I put them in the grandchildren's creative box. Happy birthday. And the other ones I kept, and they make fabulous like ridge tiles. Now, unfortunately, they don't, because they're for children, they're not really, really sharp. But you can cut several layers of thinner card and then put it together to create a thicker card. So this comes back to the talk about the pantry. It's about having a stash of materials. The more that you can have free, the better. But also having a stash of tools and brushes. But I worry sometimes when I go around a lot of railway shows and things like that, and the prices of some of the tools are very expensive. And what I want to just to reiterate, again, we're not reinventing the wheel, is I wish I could, I should have took a picture of my workbench. There is not a technical or a highly expensive tool in my arsenal, in my pantry. I don't have any. It's all this. So you don't need fancy tools, fancy machines. I mean, I know I've got the fancies. I've got a laser cutter, but you don't have to use a laser cutter. You can just use craft knives and rulers with finger guards to cut your pieces out. Scalpels are brilliant thing. If you don't have a scalpel in your tool bag, get yourself a really, really good scalpel. Obviously, be careful. They do cut. As I found out, I lost half a finger once. But they're brilliant for like cutting very delicate curves and stuff like that. So it's not just the materials that you're using that you can make your money go further. It's also the tools that you're using. Now, this just highlights like I said, these were the offcuts that poor Noah packaged, child labour. And somebody called these, which I really loved, they call them laser cutter poo. You'd have to bleep that bit out. Yeah, laser cutter poo, which I thought it's true. This is the bit that Tone brushes out of the machine after he's cut something out, so you get a bit of everything. But you'll be amazed. Hands up anyone who has read the Petite Properties magazine. There's a few, yeah. In there, we're going to have an article of a guy who's made a whole series of little buildings, and another guy that's made a church, just a micro 1 to 144th church, just out of all these little offcuts. So it just goes to show you just have to have a little bit of creativity and imagination. Now, I'm not waffling, that's good. On to the last page, people, we're all right. So we've talked about being a package predator, and the fact that when you're using cheap materials, it allows you to experiment. I have got to where I am with what I build because of all the things that went wrong. So much went wrong in the last 23 years. So many disasters. But out of all of the disasters I've ever had, it's like a bit of a phoenix rising out. You learn. When things go wrong, you learn. When things don't go to plan, it warps. I need to do that differently. I need to do that differently next time. Now, if, as I said earlier, if you're using expensive materials and expensive things that you've bought, you don't want to get it wrong because that's a waste of money. But by being wombles, by reusing, by cutting the side off of Weetabix boxes when they're empty, not when they're full, by doing all of that, if it goes wrong, it doesn't matter. Bin it, move on. Okay? Now, is there anything that anybody specifically wants to ask me? No. Any specific questions on saving money, on making your budget go a bit further? No, that is so it. Right, we can just like flick through. So basically, look around where you shop. If you can be brave and shop on somewhere like Temu, there are benefits for it. I do know that several clubs have got designated buyers. So they've designated somebody within the club and they put the order in. You can save so much money and you can build up so many resources for simple things like brushes and all that kind of stuff. For those that don't want to shop on Temu, obviously in your support your local high street, you've got the Works, you've got B&M is a good one as well. Does anyone have B&M? That just swallows me whole when I go in there. I come out with like Christmas decorations in springtime. I'm like, what? I didn't need that. So going to these cheaper shops, looking in the children's section, buying raw materials, using your pantry of all your connective bits and pieces to create. At the end of the day, you are all miniaturists. You're all genetically wired to reuse, recycle, repurpose. That's by our very nature, that's what we are. Just sometimes if we just refocus on it, get those packaging predator goggles on at Christmas, go home, organise your stash so that you know exactly what you've got. So then if you think, oh, I'm doing a roof, I've got that fabulous watercolour card, I could use that. So it's being aware of what you've got. Then also knowing what you have in your stash will then inspire you when you're sitting there planning your next project. Okay? So I'm going to not waffle too long. My last thing that I want to talk about is just super quickly is things like adhesive. And it's the question that I get asked the most. And for those that ask me, this is the adhesive that I use for everything. Okay, it's just a PVA bond. You don't have to make note of the brand, that's not important. The big thing I want you to take home is the importance of buying good quality PVA for what you're creating. Now, when I say good quality PVA, our minds automatically think, well, that means it's got to be a little bit expensive. You know, we want to be chucking a little bit of money at our adhesive. No, it's actually the complete opposite. Do not be buying a craft PVA. So Hobbycraft is wonderful for lots of things, but please don't buy the craft PVA there. What I want you to do is go to B&Q, go to Wix, used to be Homebase. I used to send everybody to Wilkinson's and buy the PVA that is in the DIY section. So the decorators section, yeah, near the wallpaper and all the sandpaper. Buy the PVA from there and then either Use it with a big brush if you're doing a big project, or decant it into a little fine tip glue applicator for when you're doing smaller things. The reason I say this is because this is as cheap as chips, and it actually sticks things. Okay, so it comes in bigger quantities than you probably buy in Hobbycraft, but hands down, it's a better product. So just when I say better quality, it doesn't necessarily mean more expensive. So start looking as well for other things in the DIY section, things like sandpaper and all different things that we use as miniaturists, because you will find that they are better quality and cheaper in a DIY section than they will be in the craft section. Okay, so be a bit devious. So I hope that has helped in some way. I told you right from the outset, I'm really not reinventing the wheel. And most of what I've said, you're probably doing anyway. But just refresh your memory of what's in your stash. It will inspire you, trust me. Like I said, when we moved, I probably took a day longer than I should have done to pack all my stuff up to move to the church, because I was just having eureka moments of finding things that I didn't know. Just stuff it in a cupboard, stuff it in a drawer. So get it all out, have a look at it, and be creative. And remember, at the end of the day, we are all just wombles. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it.